Fast forward.
Well, yeah.
Except for certain people
really, really like the pre-show. I don't even know if I like the pre-show, but it's not stopping me from doing it. So, but I guess that could be said about a lot of our jobs. So, hey, my birthday is on week 1.
It is.
Yeah,
it
I'm
is.
very excited. Let's start. You ready?
I was going to say, are we into it already?
I don't know. It feels like we started. I just saw my birthday and I had to notice that and say it out loud.
I've read over the whole thing.
You're prepared. I'm slightly less so, but that's not going to stop us. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Big Idea Podcast. And I'm Eric Bramlett, and I'm here with
Tammy Melchien.
How you doing today, Tammy?
It's a little humid in the room that we're in.
It's humid in the Plainfield offices.
Yes.
I love the Plainfield offices. I'm excited to be here. I love the fact that there's a quote wall that's just like a young little quote wall.
There you go.
Yep, there it is. It's just so cute and little and sweet, and I can't wait for it to take up the whole room. Yeah, so that's exciting. It's good to know that some traditions live on in multiple
until the humidity
venues.
in here weakens they all just fall off the wall.
The just spontaneously
Yes.
creates water. So we are talking about Simplify. This is our Show Up Sunday fall series. Big old kickoff. Invite your friends.
It's a big one.
Celebration Generosity is inside of the Simplify series.
All church baptisms are inside of the Simplify
I
series.
mean, seriously.
Could we do anything more?
It is the kitchen sink of weekend series. We're very excited about it. And ironically, with all of that going on, the theme is actually to simplify. So
just a minute, we may need to go rethink this.
Right, yeah, exactly. Let's do a short rewrite.
Well, but no, that leads exactly into what the series is about.
All right, well, why don't you kick us off and talk about it?
It's because when we think our lives feel so complicated and busy and overwhelming, and we often just look at everything out exterior to that and blame that for the frenetic living that we feel. But really, our need is to simplify internally.
Yeah.
And, because you know those people that their lives are crazy, but yet they seem to walk with a peace and a gentleness and a...
Yeah, and you think to yourself, how are they pulling that off?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's because internally they have learned to simplify. And so the series really is going to say, stop looking at everything around you and making that the bad guy.
Right.
In your craziness.
Yeah, if I can stop everything that's going on over there.
Yeah, because usually we can't stop a lot that's going out there, and so then we live more as victims of our busyness and of our kind of feeling overwhelmed. Whereas if we take time to really look inside and simplify what's inside, we could be living life in a whole different way. And so in each week of these series, what we're really doing is we're looking at something that tends to clutter our souls, and then a simplifying practice that can help kind of remove that clutter.
I like it. I like where this is going. That's good stuff.
See how you set me up? You didn't even know it?
Well, see, didn't I know it, though? I mean, really? I mean, that's part of what makes this work.
When have you read this?
I looked at this when we were trying to figure out what the titles were, and
okay.
it didn't have any of this fancy writing on it.
Cool.
One thing I do want to mention that it's kind of important, and maybe an internal conversation that doesn't have to get out to, once we get to the weekend, but while this title was based on a concept that came out of a book by Bill Hybels, what's really true about this content is that it's not in any real way matching up with the content from that book. Which I just want to mention just in case you're thinking, oh, we should have like book reading parties with, this series. It's really not based on that in kind of any way, shape, or form. So I just wanted to mention that from the outset before we dive in. So let's dive in.
Okay.
Let's talk about week 1.
Show Up Sunday.
This is Show Up Sunday, y'all.
Otherwise known as Eric's birthday.
The best day of the year.
Woohoo! So everyone show up wherever Eric is.
That's
well,
right.
Not
well, you
really.
could
actually,
because
you
I try to go to
all
everyone.
the campuses.
Yeah,
there you go.
I expect a cake everywhere I go, so
no pressure.
Just heads up.
Because I'm sure you don't have anything else to think about on that day than Eric's birthday.
Simplify.
Okay, so in this one, we're starting with that feeling of the stress of busyness and our addiction to doing, and feeling like we always, are running 1,000 miles, and seeing that as kind of the reason for us feeling overwhelmed and frenetic in our lives. And so the simplifying practice in this one is about taking time to be with God, taking time to be with the creator of our souls. And so we're going to use the classic Mary and Martha story of one who was caught up in all the doing. And not that doing is bad, but Mary, who kind of gave herself to being in the presence of God. And Jesus says that she has chosen what is better and it will not be taken from her. Mm. And so, knowing that we're going to have a lot of people coming this week who aren't typically with us, probably a lot of people who don't have a church home or have a pattern of that in their life. Probably a lot of people that don't really think as they go through their day-to-day life about God's presence with them and about connecting with Him. In the same vein that a few years ago when we did Making Room for Life and that putting God in first, this is going to be a message that challenges us to think about, oftentimes when we feel so busy, the last thing we feel like we have time for is
some kind of deliberate stopping and connecting with God.
But that's exactly what we need. And when we, you see that in the principle of Sabbath, which we may touch on. I don't think this is going to be necessarily a Sabbath message, but, we were designed with that need. Yeah. That's kind of part of God's intent from us from the beginning. And so when we ignore that, it leads to our feelings of stress and overwhelmed and all of that stuff.
And I think, what's interesting about that for me too is that often when we think about the catchphrase of, a God-shaped hole, that like people are coming and they're missing something. It's like, what are they missing? Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times, and for good reason, we think of other parts of the process of following Jesus. We think of, like giving of ourselves, turning over kind of our own being in charge to Jesus. But for a lot of people, this concept, while it seems kind of obvious maybe to Christ followers who've been around for a while, this concept is just as radical as any of the other concepts that show up in that category. So I think it'll be a great way to start the series and a great way to really kind of help be in touch with a very, very real felt need that our communities are going through in this kind of world of busyness and craziness.
And hopefully our Show Up Sunday crowd will be inspired to give it a try by coming back.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
I kind of feel like Justin Bieber is like creeping on me.
Well,
shoulder.
Yeah.
It's a little disturbing.
I loves me some Biebs, said B.T. Norman. All right. If you're just doing the audio version of this podcast, you didn't get that at all, and I'm not going to explain it. Week 2.
Michael.
Michael.
Let's keep going.
It's the only one. Michael. I have to stop drinking. Week 2 is called Forgiving.
Forgiving.
What are we talking about here?
Because certainly one of the things that can totally clutter our soul is when we're holding on to hurt, bitterness, anger over something that has happened to us. And I think, it's no secret, but we'll do some research on the real effects of how that kind of stuff is damaging to us physically, emotionally, mentally, in all kinds of ways. Holding on to the bitterness, holding on to a grudge, holding on just to hurt, the inability to let go of something. It clutters our soul. And so the soul decluttering practice in this one is forgiveness. And I love the quote. We use it almost every time we teach on forgiveness from Lewis Smead. To forgive is just set a prisoner free and discover that the prisoner was you. And so that's really what the heart of this message is going to be. And we're doing some research on what some very practical handles we can give people for how to walk through some steps of forgiveness, how to let go, how to let healing replace the hurt. And so that's where we're going with this one.
Yeah, and I think this one is probably the easiest to hear, but maybe one of the more difficult to actually apply. for obvious reasons. I mean, it becomes, the challenge of that decision when someone is held on to something for so long can be very, very difficult. So it's kind of a kid gloves kind of thing. It sounds easy on the outset, but I think it will really challenge our attenders. So
yeah. And I should have mentioned up top, I mean, you probably see it if you see the scriptures going through, that really in this series we're focusing everything on narratives in the life, the example of Jesus or the teaching of Jesus, or both in that. And so a lot of gospel stuff happening in this.
Love it. All right, and so after 2 weeks then of Simplify, we continue with week 3 of Simplify, and we are celebrating generosity on Sunday.
We are
giving, and we are giving away everything that comes in that weekend to the 4 teams. And so it's a little bit of a different week, but we still will be addressing the Simplify concept. So
the majority of the content for the teaching time will be about the 4 teams, but we always have probably a 5 to 7 minute teaching moment in here. That, talking about one of the things that I think clutters our soul is dissatisfaction. And that is fueled in us by all the messages that we continue to get from our consumeristic society that, you need this to be happy, you need more, you need, and we just so easily can get on the treadmill of that, which just leaves us feeling always dissatisfied. And so, we're going to look at the short passage here from Jesus where he talks about not storing up treasure on earth, but storing up treasure in heaven, for where your treasure is, your heart will be also. And it's kind of moving our heart from like this desire for consumption and more to more and more to desiring to see God's kingdom advanced, and how that can free us from dissatisfaction, and instead we can find satisfaction in that. And so the decluttering practice in this is simply to be generous, to give.
Yeah, and I love the line here. Can we step back and ask ourselves, is this the legacy I want to leave? Really just a mountain of stuff? Super convicting and powerful. And as I think most of you know, or you should know, Celebration Generosity is it's like the largest collection of first-time givers, start their journey of generosity at Celebration Generosity. So a huge opportunity to be able to communicate this truth, and I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be great.
So
10th year anniversary of Celebration.
If I write that line about the legacy, that means you'll probably give the largest gift you've ever given?
I think it could happen. 10 years in a row, it keeps happening that way.
Right.
So yeah, it would show up.
You can ask Eric about that after.
Yeah, please. I want to be held accountable as it relates to that. All right, so that was week 3, Celebration Generosity, and now the week after, we're celebrating what God has done, but we're also focusing in on a new topic, and this week it's called trusting.
Trusting, because so many people can relate to the soul cluttering thing of worry and anxiety and fear, and so so many times that's something that and I don't know, that probably is both genders, but I know a lot of times when I talk to women, it's just like the worry and the anxiety about things that aren't even happening and stuff like that just clutters our souls. And so, I think the kind of the opposite of that is living a life where you're just trusting in God. And so we're going to look in this one maybe a little bit different way to look at the story of Peter and Jesus walking on water. Because, the story starts out as this fearful moment where the disciples are caught in the middle of this storm, and then if that isn't bad enough, then they see what they think is a ghost walking on the water toward them. And so they're pretty paralyzed with anxiety and fear. But I love what Peter's response is in that moment. His instinct is right. In that moment, once they realize it's Jesus, he says, "Can I come to you?" And so, a lot of times we think about getting out of the boat, like taking a risk or something. But I love the fact that the reason he wanted to get out of the boat is he wanted to be where Jesus was. And so his instinct in that moment of anxiety and fear is right. He goes towards Jesus, and as long as he kind of keeps his focus on there, he's doing okay. But it's when then he allows the scariness of the waves and the storm and that he begins to sink. And then you see in that moment that Jesus reaches out and saves him. And so in this story, you see both in the middle of these things that we are fearful of or that we have anxiety about, the right move is to move towards Jesus, but also to know Jesus is going to reach towards you in that same moment. And so that's really what the trust is all about. But we also want to give a practical, okay, what is the decluttering practice in that? And I think, if you look at Paul's Philippians 4, 6, and 7 about prayer being something that can, what if our instinct whenever we're feeling that anxiety, that worry, our way to move towards Jesus is to pray, is to bring it before him. N.T. Wright says to fling all of those things onto God's back, and let him carry it. And so that sense of kind of moving towards him. And I think through prayer, God moves towards us in ways that we can discern as well. Yeah. And so that's where we're going with this week.
Well, and I love the Peter story too, because it shows too, I think, that it's a process and it's not about getting it right once and then kind of being done. All right, good, I got that right.
Yeah. Oh, I trusted him, so I no longer have worry or fear.
Yeah, so I mean, just even in the story, the fact that he does do it, but then he looks away, falls, kind of regains. I mean, for me, it's this stuff creeps up. And so it's a
continual
constant
practice.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is also why do not be anxious, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, present your rest. It's you don't have one situation, then your situations are done.
Right. Exactly.
You always, every situation that comes up.
Completely situationless. So happy. All right, week 5. We're on the home stretch last week, and we're going to celebrate some all-church baptisms with this.
It's going to be a
this
great
week.
day.
And we're talking about living.
We are.
Simplified living.
Before I go into the specifics of this, I heard a speaker a couple weeks ago talking about how when you say yes to the right thing, when you know what your yes is, it simplifies your life in so many ways. Because when you know what you're saying yes to, automatically you know all of the things you're saying no to, what the other things you're saying yes to. And the example she gave was, when she said I do to her husband, when she married her husband, she said yes to him. It made a whole lot of other decisions very clear for her. Right. She knew she was saying no to every other human being. Right. You know what I mean? And that kind of stuff.
The domino effect of that.
Yeah. And so, with that idea or thought, I think sometimes our lives feel so cluttered because we are saying yes to so many lesser things, and there's no real rhyme or reason a lot of times to it. We're just pursuing different things. We're setting different goals. We're living for different purposes, and never, a lot of times not really stepping back and saying, "Wait a minute, what am I about?"
Yeah. Does it feel like almost a series of reactions instead of something that's a purposeful?
Yeah.
Decision?
We can just go through our lives, signing up for different things and doing this and all this stuff just without really putting thought into what we're doing. And so the idea in this message is when you say yes to Jesus and his mission and decide that is going to be your primary yes, then, everything else in your life can orient itself around that. Yeah. And it makes it a lot clearer what you're, because you're saying yes to that as your primary focus, you kind of know what's supposed to be my priorities of saying yes and what are all the things that I can just let go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you certainly saw that with the disciples, right?
Absolutely.
Follow me.
Yeah. And we're looking at this story, the saying yes in this, this story of Jesus calling the first disciples. He says, "Come follow me, and I will send you out to fish for people, or I will make you fishers of men." And so there's kind of a 2-part yes there. It's like a yes to a relationship with him, which will lead us to the baptism stuff.
Yes.
See what we did there?
I like that.
And then, the make you fishers of men is saying yes to his mission. And so we really have kind of saying yes to the relationship and saying yes to a purpose for your life.
Yeah. And it's important to note too, as you're describing that this is one of those Sundays, we kind of do them twice a year, where we are super intentional about incorporating the baptism ask into the Sunday and into the message construct, so that and really when you think about that, try to think in terms of eliminating distractions. That we just want to be doing everything we can to eliminate the distractions that are out there for anyone who might decide to say yes to Jesus on that day. Right? Yeah, we're good. 24, 25.
Okay.
We're good.
Sorry.
No, it's good. It's good to check. Screensaver clip, goes on, and then we can't see ourselves.
Put me into a trance
we
there for a
panic.
second.
And Michael doesn't know what we're talking about. So I think a lot of times we kind of dismiss that. Well, I don't know if we do or not, but let's be careful not to dismiss sort of how important it is to lay out those distractions and try to get them out of the way, because a lot of times, I know there are people in my small group who absolutely responded to the call in the moment and said, oh yeah, I need to get baptized. And were it not for, some of those very, very careful words of, hey, we've removed all of the possible reasons for you to say no so that you can say yes, it's a big deal. So make sure that that's a part of what's happening for this.
And it will be in the manuscript.
Yeah,
so
perfect.
We'll plan to have that in there.
Love it. All right. Well, Simplify. It took us a little while to talk about Simplify.
It's a 5-weeker.
5-week series.
5-weeker.
So this isn't no 3-week get her done thing. So make it count. Really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a fantastic fall and just a great Show Up Sunday series to celebrate. So
say goodbye to Justin.
Yeah, Justin, it's been great. I don't think we'll be back for a while, although I don't know if Cisnewski and BT can fix the air conditioning and the humidity.
It's probably just because I'm the only person here today. So
either way, that's probably what it's going to take.
Air conditioning.
Well, it might be true. I don't know. I certainly, it would be worth it. I would make sure that you had as much air conditioning as you needed if I could find the buttons.
Yeah, but it's also a good excuse now for me to take the rest of the day off.
That's true. I mean, you can't work here, right? It's just too humid, so we got to go.
The reality is I was only here for like a half an hour before this.
Well, see, we don't have to go into realities. We're trying to simplify. All right, well, I think that's about all we have to say about that. Thanks so much for being a part of the Big Idea Podcast. Look forward to lots of awesome brainstorms for this series. This has been Tammy and Eric. So long, everybody.